Okay, so we are at the Saturday Bucky meeting for June 25th, 26th. We've had emails from three people, John Butler, Philemon, and Kelly. They're off at birthday parties. Whether they're the same birthday party or not, I don't know, but all three of them are going to birthday parties. And I know that Susan is probably at her hospital, and Joe is traveling and is not going to be available this weekend. So it's just us mighty beings, us right here. And more may join us as we come along. Manu, how are you feeling today, and what do you expect to get out of today's call?
I feel great. There's a lot of energy around. You know, I'm really grateful that the three of us are here. There's going to be a lot. and that's what I expect. A lot from this. A lot of exchange. And how do you feel? What do you expect?
Thank you, Manu. Yeah, actually, I'm glad regardless of how many the meeting still goes on. I really like that. Because we do take away, like whoever is here, we take away a lot from our different individuals, right? So regardless of numbers, I've been very proud to be a part of all the discussions that we have had. So today there are two things I'm very grateful for as well. Besides the meeting, I've started back my Qigong exercise. That's why a friend of mine is helping me, because I have issues with circulation. So they're just helping me short exercises. So I've started. That's why it's a bit of a rush in the mornings. And then the other one is there are many things happening in the school, and one of the biggest Korean managed entertainment companies who handle this, one of the largest singing groups called Blackpink. They're global. We've been appointed to audition dancers, singers, and all that from Malaysia, and it's through our dance people, and our school's the only one where the audition is happening and involved and all that. So this is us pushing for the superpower for each child, and proving to people you can create a whole ecosystem and an industry and a business from nothing. Yeah, so I'm very, very grateful for that. So thank you. And Steve, how do you feel, and what do you expect to get from today?
I got to tell you, I'm just so excited to be here, and there are very few places I can have these conversations about the nature of mind and the nature of brain and the nature of human potential and our stewardship on the planet, and this idea of not leaving anyone behind. I'm so thrilled when anybody joins us who join us from time to time. I'm sure that that each person who joins these calls are engaged in something wonderful. I know that you are, and it's been fun to sit on the sidelines and watch you come in and let us know what's going on for you. And it's amazing how you've been inspiring to me in terms of taking these principles and doing what I can to actually apply them. I've done as much I can earnestly, and I feel like that and you've been a good example. So in a way, I'm kind of competing with you, let's see if I can implement this much as Anne has. But, and of course, Kelly has done a great job putting this thing together. So I'm very excited today, and we're just going to continue. Over the week, we have a call on Wednesdays during the week. Anybody who wants to come to those Wednesday calls, it's 7 a.m. Mountain Time. If you want to come on Wednesdays, you can to contribute. But on Wednesday, we talked about it, and I said how frustrated I was because we're just reading along. But the consensus was, hey, reading along, I get more out of reading it with somebody than I do reading it on my own. So I thought, okay, because I like to see things high-paced and doing things, but I'll tell you, there's no way to high-pace read Buckminster Fuller, I don't think. And so we're going to go from there. All right. So I'm going to share. Here we go. And this is our reading. Yeah.
Before we start the reading, I just want to share with you the story, the one about the bee last week. Yeah, okay. I'm going to be using it today because at 3 o'clock today, I'm having a very, very tough meeting with the the people whose license we are collaborating with in one of our schools, we just shifted into their premises, right? They have a license, but they don't know how to run the school, so we took over the running. But I just want to share with you, we're dealing with a sexual harassment and molestation case of another student towards a boy of about 15, 16 years old, on 3 girls, right? Touching them and things like this. So it is really a rough case because the parents are bullies, right? So now my business collaborator, they are like, they're making decisions that supports the bully and the boy, right? So I just want to share with you that I'm going to be using that B story to deal with it today.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Just want to let you know how powerful a lot of my hair standing just talking about it, because I need them to understand that we are coming from the space of the children, and which children, we have to be very clear. The one in the wrong or the one in the right, you know? Yeah. And it is about that B. You're not coming from the space of the child, the girls. It has to be a safe space.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't compromise on that. Yeah, but I feel that will be a very, very powerful story to, and it's not just a story; it's a truth, you know. So anyway,
metaphor, yeah.
So I'm going to be doing that. Yeah, carry
So
on.
do you want to just go ahead and recount briefly the B story?
No, it's very clear. Last week we went really, it was very clear. I love it.
Okay, all right, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, dynamite then.
Just do it.
What?
Just recap the B story.
Yeah, please. Anne, that would be great if you would recap the B story for all of us, because somebody's listening to this who wasn't here last week and they're not going to go find the recording. So go ahead and recap the story if you would, please.
Right. Okay. In a nutshell, right?
Okay.
Because one of the things Bucky observed was that if a bee were to fly into a house, right?
Yeah.
So as it tries to fly out, it looks for the light, yes, and because it comes through the glass easily, I think this is where the bee heads towards, and it keeps knocking against this invisible wall, yeah, that it cannot see, but it keeps seeing the light. So some people will open the window for the bee to fly out, but the bee, there's still the glass part of the window, and so not a lot of people are thinking from the perspective of the bee and what the bee sees, and all they need to do was to cover the glass and the bee will head towards the light. Yeah. So it is more about that that bee, yeah, and to think from the perspective of that
right.
being, that little creature in our universe. Yeah.
Right.
So I think, yeah, I
Do
get
you
it.
see that? Some part, just a comment on what, C follows B. B, C. C follows B. And in order for B to go follow C, you need C has to step aside. You have to open the window.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just a funny point.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, did I miss anything from there?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
In other words, the people are trying to help the bee, but they are looking at the world the way they see the universe, and don't realize that if they look at the universe, it'd be simple to say, I'll simply cover the window. Because the bee doesn't know the difference between a window and an open space. So I cover the window because the bee can't fly out there. I have to think like a bee. I have to think like the people I'm serving. I can't think like I'm the boss, or they should be smart enough to figure this out. Right?
But further, you have to think yourself. You have to be I think that people might be closing the window because they're ignorant.
Yeah.
You really need to know.
Yeah.
You need to be educated on the matter. I've been experiencing the matter, meaning that you see a bee hitting on a glass, and then you have to really be conscious that you got to open the window.
Yeah.
But if you didn't, You actually go, if we're like some, or maybe me, you just go and reach and kill the bee.
Yeah, some people kill the bee. And
Yeah.
maybe the window doesn't open. So then what I've got to do is cover the window and open the door.
Yeah.
Or open some other aspect so that, yeah, I got to think like the bee. I can't think like the boss. I can't expect the bee to think like me.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good reminder. And I've noticed that my screen on the my computer's frozen, but I still have my thing over here, which bothers me because I don't even think I'm going to be able to do the I'm not going to be able to share screen. So
do you want me to open the file and try to share the screen? Let me just see.
Would you please? That would be wonderful.
Yeah, let me just see.
And just for your information, we're on page 8. The second pair, the first full paragraph of page 8. I really got it.
I'm just opening. It just take time. You see page 8, eh?
That's what?
You see what page are we?
Yeah, page 8. And you should be able to share. I don't have to give permission to share. You should hit your green square and it'll say interrupt the person. You say yes.
Yeah, I know that. I just want to get on the page first.
All right.
I think I passed the page now. Right.
And I need to restart this machine. I either need to get my driver fixed or I need to restart this machine before we start this call. And I forgot. Wow.
Okay. Let me share.
Yeah.
Where is it? I think it's this one. Share. Okay, that should be it. Let me go.
Yep, there you are. Page 8.
Page 10. Is that page 8? No, 9. I don't want to. Okay, here we are. And where were we? Which paragraph?
I think up. Some more. Oh, there's a pirate story coming. Okay, good. I think some more up, right?
No, we're changing page here. You say which one is this?
I think you've opened the wrong file. That looks like Spaceship Earth, and we're doing Oblivion. We're doing
okay, let me stop share here.
Design Discipline Utopia Oblivion book.
Oblivion. Let me open that one.
I'm going to reboot my computer, so maybe I can bring it in very quickly too.
Okay.
I'm also glad to see that this Kelly is out at the birthday party.
What do you say, Anne?
I say I'm glad to know that this Kelly is going to a birthday party, that is out and so on, which is really great.
We're reading what? Oblivion.
Right. Design Discipline, Oblivion, or Utopia.
Okay, let me just see. Okay, I'll open that one now.
Okay, good. And I might be open in a minute here.
I have 2 versions here.
If you got 2 from me, one would be the reading, but it doesn't matter. If you open any one and go to page 8, you'll be there.
Okay. Let me just share my screen and then we scroll.
Actually, my computer's coming up right now. Yeah, there I am. Got it. Join.
Welcome back.
Audio.
Who is sharing now? Is it you or me?
That's you sharing, I think. You're the one sharing and scrolling. So if you go to page If you go to page 8, we'll be there.
Okay.
That's page 2.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This should be 8.
There's a little colored banner at the top of it.
Yeah, here it is.
There it is. And then up to a century ago is where we're going to start.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Who's gonna read?
Who's going to read tonight?
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, good. And you can read. That's wonderful.
Up to a century ago, 27 years was the average lifespan of humanity, despite that a few exceptional humans of history lived beyond their 80 years and 10, i.e., that is 90 years. Up to a half century ago, it was assumed that only one human in 100 could be economically successful, and even then would survive to an average age of 42 years. Now, in the 1960s, average expectancy of North American industrialized men has reached 70 years, with 2 out of 5 men and economic success as well. By 1970, the majority, that is more than 50% of all humans around Earth, will be both physically and economically successful, or there won't be any humanity, save possible a few helpless, short-lived survivors of the atomic holocaust. Do I stop here?
We can stop. Yeah, that's a good place to stop for comments and questions.
The first comment that he was optimistic.
Yeah.
I don't get the part where I say, or there won't be any humanity. By the
You don't get which part?
Or there won't be any humanity.
No, we have the power of destruction.
Yeah.
And
Because when he wrote this in the 60s, 65, this was published in 69. When he wrote it in the 60s, this was 15 years after or 20 years after the atom bomb went off. And so now he's predicting in the mid 60s, he's saying, hey, by the 70s, we might have killed ourselves off.
I see. Got it.
Short-lived survivors of the atomic holocaust. He was very nervous about another atomic bomb.
Yeah, because I think the Cold War was huge at that time. Yeah.
You bet it was.
Yeah. Okay, I got it.
He didn't obviously he didn't anticipate the failure of the Soviet Union.
Okay.
What's that?
The failure of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. And, I will just give you a little personal thing. If you look behind me up here on the wall, I'm now on my computer. I'm going to turn off that blur. But if you look behind me, what you're going to see is you're going to see an Atlas ballistic missile. And see if I can get it. You see that thing sticking up right there?
Yes, on top.
Yeah.
To the right.
On top and to the right.
Yeah.
And that's an Atlas missile. My stepdad was ground support system for the Atlas missile from like 56 to 60. And about 61 is when it became the intercontinental ballistic missile to save us from the unilateral threat of the Russians. So with the Atlas missile, we now had the opportunity to kill each other off.
Yeah.
And Bucky knew that at this time because he wrote this in 65. And so the Atlas missile became active in like 61 or something. I could look it up, but
yeah,
I have all the top secret books about that Atlas missile, how to build an Atlas missile. They put 5 Atlas missiles together to build a Saturn missile to put a human being on the moon, which is very interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
So they weren't just for total destruction, but that's what he was referring to is this, we just might kill ourselves off. And until recently with Putin threatening atomic weapons in Ukraine, although there are thousands of weapons everywhere and anybody could push a button at any time, some crazy person could push a button, Putin actually said, hey, I'm going to use some atomic weapons. That is scary.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions on that?
Yeah, it is actually scary in a world that is ignorant of some consequences or that doesn't remember history.
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
it might be anywhere. It might be anywhere.
Yeah.
And today with AI controlling things,
Yeah.
there might be a glitch or a mistake,
Yeah.
and that thing will go on before you can realize that it was just some false signal.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Or somebody who's trying to make the bee fly through this part of the window and not through that part of the window, because the bee ought to be smart enough to figure it out.
Yes.
And if the bee can't figure it out, the bee's too dumb, right? I mean, there's so much judgment about other people and there's so little compassion. And Bucky was so committed to the idea that we have to make the world work for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
But I think that fear of mutual destruction is still, because we've gone so much past the threshold of pulverizing this planet.
Yeah.
We have, I don't know how many times that capacity.
Yeah.
And technology is not difficult.
Yeah.
It's the constructive technology that is difficult. The destructive one is not very difficult.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm. Right.
Perfect.
I love that.
Okay, so if we're ready, we'll continue to read. And Anne, you're taking some notes, so I'll read. Or if you want to read, you surely can. Go ahead.
Okay, I think maybe you read. I'll take this down.
All right, you take that down, get your thought clear, and I'll read. For only the last decade of all history has total physical and economic success for all humanity been conceded by science to be feasible. Wasn't even feasible before then. Realization of this extraordinary potential is importantly frustrated, however, by several factors. First, it is frustrated by the as yet rigid geographical and political partitioning of humanity under divisive and competitive ideological concepts, each purported to cope most effectively only on a political bias basis with locally sovereign groups of yesterday's on foot to and froing humans and their heretofore only but 1 in 100 survival probability. Wow, he sure strings a sentence together, doesn't he? Yeah, so he's saying that this whole idea of everybody being prosperous, which is now possible due to our technology, our first frustration is that we have these rigid political boundaries, these partitioning, and that they're so divisive and so competitive in their ideological concepts. And each one argues that they are the most effective. You know, we know the best way to do it. We know how the bee should fly through the window, right? With locally sovereign groups, that means that each group seems to be able to control that group of yesterday's on foot to and froing humans, and they're heretofore only but 1 in 100 survival probability. So that's very complicated to me, but he's basically saying that the odds of these little groups surviving are 1 in 100 because they're on foot. They're on the ground, I suppose. What do you think? Is that what it's saying?
Okay. Yeah.
Carry on, Manu.
No, you go on first.
Okay. I think he's talking about these political groups are based on the past, historic. You know, like on foot is his, like people used to move around on foot, and of the traveling of men, but it is in the past, and this and then this whole and this 1 in 100 survival. This is also very limiting. It's very limiting factors that they are basing their political biases on. I think that's what it means. I don't know. Manu, what do you think?
I think that he's talking here about, like the first statement is that science, evolution is not ideological. It just experiences, as Steve would say. You have experiences, and then you store them, you learn. So in that process, initially it's messy, right?
Mm.
you do like a bumblebee. You just do things.
Yeah.
So survival is just one in a few because you're trying, and correcting. And then what is happening is that there is, during that process, there's capture by let's just call it potentates, who are the gatekeepers of some of the islands of stability or whatever, or they give their protection to it and they tax you.
Right.
So that is ideologies, that is religions, that is all of these things. That
And he's about to explain that here.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
He
but
said-
this came on because it's necessary by the on foot and to and froing human, to and froing, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Going
And
back.
they're heretofore, but only 1 in 100 survival, the result of it.
Right.
So science evolves, and science is, we're going finer and finer. We having tools to divide finer and finer in order to put together to understand better how it works. So the better we understand, the better we can put together things to help that evolution.
Right. And let's continue. This self-entrapment by man in political straitjackets came about through psychological and physiological events, which may be explained as follows. So he's going to explain now where this entrapment, where this rigidity comes from. Biology's two main branches, zoology and botany, disclose two main clearly differentiated modes of survival, static and mobile. With the great trees and the world around voyaging whales at the two size extremes. So he's saying that the whales are mobile, that's how they survive, and the trees are static. I think that's what he's saying, right? The giant trees, they're static, but they survive, and the whales survive. Comments, questions on that?
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. The biological
Gravity radiation.
Yeah. The trees are stuck with gravity and the whales are radiating out there.
Yes.
Bucky continues, the biologically static are the subjectively advantaged. The environment brings them what they need until it doesn't, I suppose. The mobiles are objectively advantaged to go and get what they need and want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You see that?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
So you have a world which you are divided, derivative, into two. One is biology, now one is zoology, and the other one is botany.
Yeah.
Zoology is advantage in a very well-bound way it is. Botany is also advantage where it is.
Yeah.
You get me?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's not one at the expense of the other.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's calling one thing subjectively advantaged. The environment brings them what they need. And the mobiles, the whales,
Objectively.
objectively advantaged. They go and get what they want.
Yes.
So evidently both are advantaged. And it's interesting, they've done studies on trees, and trees, as the climate starts to change and they realize if it starts to become a desert, the tree that knows it can't survive will pass off its nutrients to other trees of a different species to help
Wow.
those trees survive. That the biology has a supreme network. Have you heard about this? There's a book called Finding the Mother Tree, and she does all this research on how these trees communicate and work together. If the trees are attacked, if one tree on the edge is attacked by worms, that tree tells the other trees or by some bug, that tree tells the other trees and helps them build an immunity for it. because they're stuck right where they are. And they are subjectively advantaged. The environment's supposed to bring them what they need. And that's interesting. I'll continue reading. After hunting fruits, nuts, herbs, as well as fish and other zoological game fairly successfully for thousands of millenniums, man discovered that he could tame some of the game, which spontaneously performed its own regeneration. So he started building cattle ranches and fish farms. From this lesson, man discovered that he could plant the vegetation's seeds, and thus man started. Next page, please. About 8 millenniums ago, to cease his wandering and to remain on guard the territories, to remain to guard the territories he found most favorable for his locally regenerative animal husbandry and agriculture. So
Wow.
we stopped being hunters and gatherers and started being farmers.
What come to your mind? What word? And what word comes to your mind?
Monopoly.
Yeah.
Anti-entropy, I think. Anti-entropy.
How come? Why do you say anti-entropy?
Well, you realize that there is a sweet spot, and then you guard it. You build a construct to guard it in such a way that it's advantageous to your species.
Yeah. Now, the Native Americans were really good at this because they basically traveled around and they would like plant. They had what they called the three sisters. I wish Susan was here. She knows more about this, I think. But they would take a fish and throw it in with corn and a bean and a squash. The three sisters, corn, bean, and squash, and the fish. And then what would happen is the squash would come up right away and shelter the little sprouts of the beans and the corn. And then the corn would shoot up through the squash, and then the beans would wrap around the corn. And the Native Americans would travel around to these areas and they'd harvest the areas and then put the food in supply, and they'd store it in caves and in underground things. Well, the US soldiers found out about this, and so they would go pilfer their storages, and they would wipe out their, they didn't want it. They couldn't move with the weather. They couldn't move with the buffalo. And so that's how the Western civilization, that's how Americans wiped out the Indians, was they broke all those supply lines. The Native Americans were moving in a regenerative fashion, realizing that if they overfarmed an area, that it wasn't practical. Well, we came in the 1900s and started doing industrialized farming. And of course, that's what it created the big Dust Bowl and all the famine on the Grapes of Wrath era. Anyway.
So you say, if I just interrupt, you say the corn, you first plant the corn.
Yeah. You plant three together.
You plant three together.
You plant three together. Corn, squash, and beans.
Yes.
The squash creates the cover to protect the other sprouts. The corn comes up through the squash and creates a stalk, and the beans come up the stalk so that you can harvest the beans. The three sisters. And now
what is the role of a corn, say?
The role of the corn, it becomes the stalk on which the bean grows.
Okay.
So the bean grows like a vine up the corn stalk.
Yes.
And we're coming back to that. I think there's a lot of this regenerative farming going on where they do look at things like that. They have chickens and they have cows. And what they do is they let the cows go through and drop the poop, and then maybe the goats go through because the goats eat it down a little further. But after the cows go through, then the chickens go through and they eat all the fly larvae out of the cow dung. And they even will take these giant chicken bins, giant chicken houses, and they just simply move them onto another place. and they're doing regenerative farming like that.
Wow.
Yeah, cool. Okay, we ready for more reading? Anne, do you want to read from Because?
Sure,
Yes.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Because man's legs are so short and the planet Earth so big, and because few areas around it where he could find immediate vital support in his early days on the planet amounted totally to less than 5% of the Earth's surface, man has mistakenly identified himself during the last 8 millenniums with the rooted vegetation rather than with the mobile vertebrates of which type he is a member. Those few humans found a local good thing dug in, and the multitude of others hung hopefully and hungrily around the successful few's exclusive property, which the economically successfully enacted as a concept into strong-arm enforced laws of man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow,
Can we
this
look
is-
at this paragraph?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so evidently, when we were hunter-gatherers, we were less than 5% of the Earth's surface. We actually took that much up, and then we switched over and we stuck with our rooted vegetation rather than with mobile vertebrates chasing the buffalo. Right? He's talking about at least referring to Native Americans, and of course the whites hunted all through America. Lewis and Clark came up. I mean, there was a big trade where they'd capture the raccoons and the otters and the fox, and they'd capture these furs and send them back to New York. People would pay tons of money for that stuff. And then he stopped traveling around to chase those things, and they started creating farms. So they had giant mink farms and fox farms where they'd put the animals in there and industrialize that whole thing, so they didn't have to go trapping and go chasing after them.
Which is a word that is punchy here. If you were to choose one word of this whole paragraph, what would that word be?
If I were to choose one world of what?
One word.
Or one word.
Mhm.
What's a good word, Manu?
What? Just try again. I have one.
I guess sovereignty. Sovereign.
Sovereignty is a good word. He talked about that above, where all these little units of people got together and created sovereign domain over their little area of ground. What were you thinking, Manu?
I think mistakenly.
What?
Mistakenly.
Oh, mistakenly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of type 1 and type 2. Type 1 and type 2, what was it that we studied? What was the word?
Evolution.
Yes.
Type 1 and type 2 evolution.
Yes. Discovering for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And it's interesting, he says here, those few humans who found a local good thing, dug in, and then the others, the multitude of others, hung hopefully and hungrily around the successful few, while the successful few made strong arm laws. Strong arm enforce laws.
Who has the goal makes the rule.
Yeah. The one with the gold makes the rules. That's the golden rule.
And then who has the goal? But what Bucky says that who has the goal makes the rule because they don't know.
Yeah.
What is in store in a grander scale.
Right.
Because we have so much, for those past 8,000 years, because our legs are so short, we just wander around where we are.
That's right.
And our world is that where we are. And when we find a sweet spot there, we guard it, and everybody assumes that it is limited.
Right.
That there's nothing else. And then they just come around and they hang around hungrily and needy.
And it's really
And
cool.
then you who discovered the sweet spot, you make the rule.
Yeah.
And you
Yep.
become the potentate of the area.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
And
love
they
the
stick-
fact. Go ahead, Ann.
Sorry, and they stake their claim on place, because then you have people who live in a community that don't stake claims, but
Yeah.
then somebody comes along and they just stake the claim,
Yeah.
regard it as their right. This is so powerful. My God, don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and
But
it goes
it's,
back to-
I mean, that, yeah,
go ahead,
go
Mom.
on, Steve.
Well, it
I
goes
was just
back
going
to,
to,
it goes
Alright.
back to the bee story, because there's a few people that dig in and they make these, they're so successful, they enact a concept into strong arm enforced laws.
Mhm.
So because they're in charge, they make the laws, and they're strong arm enforced. There's no compassion in them. There's no, they're based on their success. And unfortunately, the multitudes that hang around those people reinforce that myth.
Mm.
We say for hundreds of years, we've said, that's okay. Those people have a right to be strong arm. They're successful. But I think that's slowly breaking down.
Hmm.
I think we're heading into crisis over it, because we got 1% of the wealth in the world or 1% of the people in the world control 99% of the wealth in the world. That's these strong arm laws enforced like crazy laws. Any other ideas on that? Okay, Anna, if you want to read from
No.
physical or natural, go ahead. Go ahead, Manu.
now you're just going to say that's it from me.
Okay.
Okay.
Physical or natural law has no inherent static property law, only behavioral properties. Nature's laws of
Okay,
evolution.
let's pause on that for just a second, because that's profound, and he's going to go into nature's laws next. So physical or natural law has no inherent static property law, only behavioral properties. Interesting. So it's talking about governing behaviors. Now let's talk about nature's laws. Go ahead, Anne.
But I
Right,
think it's
nature's-
also saying that physical is always on the move. There's no static thing in reality.
Mm.
Okay.
Therefore, there are only patterns that
Yeah.
are there for a while. So it's not inherent. That is naturally like that.
And then he compares them to nature's laws. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Anne.
Nature's laws of evolution defy all static patterns. Entropy breaks them up. Ownership is not immoral, amoral, or ethically unsound. Physical ownership is anti-entropic, which is exactly what you said, Amanu. Ergo, eventually unsustainable. Metaphysical conceptualizations now are identifiable with individuals, which in turn are unique behavioral integrities. Democritus' concept of and sound pattern identification of the phenomenon atom are forever identifiable as Democritus, that is, as his intellect functioning. These individual metaphysical discoveries are not ownership identities. Democritus did not and does not own any atoms, but he is irrevocably identifiable with their conceptioning and naming.
Okay,
Whoa.
let's figure what that is here.
Very Bucky's.
Yeah.
Nature's laws are completely metaphysical. They are not physical.
Yeah.
They are completely metaphysical. In other words, you can't say, I own an atom, because you don't even know which one is which, or an electron.
Yeah.
They come and go to and from your body, only performing some function.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? Whether you live or die, that atom will move. It will come into you and it will go away.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't own an atom is what you're saying, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what he's saying here. That's what he call it, and what he call Democritus. You know, Kritos is criteria. Demo is accepted by everybody.
Yeah, Democritus was the Greek guy who created a philosophy describing the atom as the smallest unit of value. It's interesting that his name breaks out that way, but he happens to be the scientist who discovers atoms.
Yeah.
I think there's something important here, coming back to this bee story here. Nature's laws of evolution defy all static patterns. In other words, I may be able to own a little plot of ground, and I may be able to make laws for that plot of ground. And it may be that I'm economically successful, so there might be a group of people hanging around me saying, oh, I want to be successful like them. I'm going to obey those laws. But Bucky's saying natural law is not static. Nature's laws is evolutionary. It defies static patterns. And that I had another thought relative to this. I was trying to hook it down towards the end.
What is the pattern? Let's just go back to some basics. Where does a pattern come from? What is the necessary condition for a pattern to be?
I give up. Please tell me.
Cycles.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 cycles, right?
Whatever, cycles. It has to be cyclic.
At
It has
least.
to be something that repeats in order to form a pattern. But if it's something that is repeating to form a pattern and is always subject to the influence of all other things that are moving in different ways, the pattern cannot sustain. Every pattern will cease to be. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
You mean a pattern is the result of a cycle? If there were no cycles, then there'd be no patterns.
Yes, but the cycle is in respect of some limit conditions.
A
Right?
cycle is evolutionary.
Yeah, you know, some boundary condition, and those boundaries always change.
Yeah.
Therefore, a pattern will change. It cannot be, for it to be static, really static and natural, it has to be static all the time. In other words, for example, you take the form of human. Have we been static? We've been evolving, albeit slowly, in appearance, in behavior, in a way we stand in our societies. It's been evolving. And it is anti-entropic. It will evolve to a certain point where it ceases to be necessary for nature. We are not the end point of evolution, are we?
Yeah. And he says something else here that's interesting to me, because it helps define this word anti-entropic. He says physical ownership is anti-entropic, ergo, eventually it is unsustainable.
Yeah.
So
it will be broken out, it will be broken down by entropy, because entropy is a general principle. It applies everywhere. And its function is to dissipate, to radiate.
And you'd think anti-entropic would stop the entropy, but
for a while,
because eventually it's unsustainable. It will break down.
Yeah, but you can only have anti-entropic when you have a boundary. You have to bound what you're doing. Say, for example, you're building a dam. I always like the analogy of a dam. A river is flowing, you build a dam or a river, you have a certain capacity of water that you can store. That water store is anti-entropic because it doesn't flow away. But when it reaches capacity, it has to overflow. If you don't, it breaks. So you have a regulation mechanism there to cope with the flow. But even with that, the dam will be abandoned at a certain point because everything is decaying. Whether you talk about concrete or steel or whatever that it has, it is part of recycle cycle. It will recycle behavior. So it's going to be dissipated away, and at one point you wouldn't be able to be able to use the dam. Right? If you go all over Asia, in Africa, there have been dams before. 1,000 years ago, they don't exist anymore. They were abandoned. Maybe there was desertification, maybe the river changed where it flows, you know, the track of flow, you know, whatever condition influences that construct to decay and to be abandoned. So even when we talk about regenerative, generative is for what? I'm talking about as far as we can do it. We have to think that way and try to kind of design it the best we can. And that's the only way that we can do. There's no, I mean, we can, Steve, you can't stand here and design something that will last 1,000,000 years.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he says nature's laws of evolution defy all static patterns. Entropy breaks them up.
Yep.
That's all there is to it. You can't keep anything the same. Eventually it'll break down. And you look at the laws against races marrying, you look at the laws against, like, poor Alan Turing, the guy who cut 3 years off of World War II because he developed the Turing machine and he broke the Enigma code from the Germans. They put him in, they castrated him chemically because he was gay. They basically put him in exile, castrated him chemically, and he committed suicide.
Yeah, it's very sad.
It's very sad. And here's a guy who saved 3 years of the world. How many countless lives did he save? Because there were laws that men could not have relationships with other men. That is stupid. It violates natural evolution of things. I may not understand gay behaviors, you know, but what will be is, and what is, and we've got to respect those people.
Yep.
You know? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Anything else in this paragraph that catches your eye? Anne, anything there you see?
Yeah, just a little bit. This, you know, the people that we are meeting this afternoon, who's our collaborator, you know, our school, we really are a lot more open about the students' hair and all that, right? So we do have some boys with longer hair.
Yeah.
And because they are on the board of governors, they made such a lot of noise about the hair. And
Yeah.
I had to, and they brought in a religion and said religion expects men to look like men and behave like men. And I
Right.
was like, huh? So I texted her back. I said, I'm a Catholic as well. And I hope you do realize that Jesus had long hair and he wore dressed like robes.
Yeah.
And she kept quiet. I'm like,
Absolutely.
you know,
And people forget this.
huh.
I have the same story I can tell you. When in a Mormon temple, I was in a rock and roll band. I had long hair, and I walked into that temple, and immediately there was a hush in the room because everybody was looking at my long hair, going, "What's he doing in here?" Right? And the guy who I was with, there's a big picture of Jesus in the temple. I mean, huge, 20 feet tall. And he said, everybody heard it. Now there are 2 people in this room with long hair. And so, I mean, isn't that a great story? But, you know,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
And that also cut into, you know, like we become prisoners of our representations.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Jesus has nothing to do with long hair or
Yeah.
short hair.
That's
There have
exactly
been so
right.
many arguments.
It had
right?
nothing to do with blue eyes and blonde hair.
It has
Exactly
nothing
right.
to do.
It's just
really.
a myth. Right. Yeah. Totally cool.
Yeah.
Anything else in this paragraph?
it.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's it.
All right, cool.
Okay.
If you want to read, Anne.
Okay, sure. Ergo, ownership of physical entities by man is untenable in natural law and inherently obstructive to evolution and realization of the comprehensive emancipation of man from his ignorance-rooted failures and from his imminently potential physical and economic success. However, unique service behaviors are identifiable with individuals and their respective creative capabilities. Only one's own personality and life are ownable. Only one's own inherently unique chromosomic ally monitored. Is it chromosomically monitored?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think it is. There was
Experience-
supposed to be a hyphen there, yeah.
Okay, and experience modified patterning integrity is ownable.
Now, this is
Hmm.
important. One's own personality and life are ownable. So this comes back to the B story and the bully student and the non-bully student.
Yep.
The bully student can own their life, but the other person gets to own their life as well.
Hmm.
And my unique, inherently unique chromosomically monitored, my chromosomes evidently monitor my beingness, and of course they do. Experience modified patterning integrity is ownable. In other words, I get to be accountable and responsible for my own choices. I think that's what
Okay.
that's saying.
I've got 2 or 3 thoughts here looking at this.
Okay.
From a behavioral point of view. No, first, let me just take the general one. Is the word he uses unique service behavior. Service.
Hmm.
Right? And then the second one is from my behavior is to accept the card that I play. Accept the card that I'm played.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't accept it, you'll be going nowhere. You spend your life, your lifetime lives, just struggling. You have to accept. I'm black, I'm black. Anne is Asian, she's Asian. Steve is white, is white. You have to accept that. Right? That's what they call your uniquely chromosomic Kelly monitor. And then what do I do with that? Is that I've got to play the game of life. What is called experience modified patterning integrity is ownable. In other words, Steve cannot substitute for me.
Right.
Maybe under certain conditions, well-defined and agreed between him and me.
Right on.
Can he substitute for me? But I have to be capable of thinking. I have to be capable of recognizing things, or I have to be capable and empowered to ask things I don't know, and to collaborate, and to have all of those agreements that allow us to do things together. That's the only way. I own myself in service to the others. Let me repeat it. I own myself in service to the others. That's my little spiel.
I like that. I like that. Also, you can own yourself, your inherently unique chromosomically monitored integrity. And it's too bad he combined these things into one sentence. And my experience modified patterning integrity. In other words, he's talking about epigenetic code right there. And they weren't talking about epigenetic code until the early 70s. But the idea was this whole thing of, is it genes or is it environment? And Bucky obviously believed that a person was born with certain genes, but by having certain experiences, that genetic code could be modified and could modify things. So I may be genetically not be coded in for muscles, but if I choose to exercise, I can develop muscles. Where some people just have great musculature, it's part of their genetic code. So I see that here in this last sentence. Anything else? Anybody sees anything else?
I think the word, I would like to hear you more about this service, unique service behavior.
Yeah.
It didn't say unique goal behavior.
Yeah.
It didn't say unique house. It said unique service.
Yeah.
And when you serve, when you call service, service is a flow of energy towards something. Service is vectorial, isn't it?
Yeah. It's vectorial. Absolutely. It's a flow of energy towards something. It's a service. Unique.
But out of you. That's why they say educate is drawing from you. It's not putting
Sure.
in.
You betcha. It's like saying that what he's saying here is that two people will sing, but they'll sound differently. They can both sing, but they'll have unique behaviors that will show up in their respective creative capabilities. But so no two people sing alike, no two people serve alike. And I think Jesus used to talk about this with Mary and Martha, right? The apostles were all worried about Martha being too a certain way. And
Yes.
you know, and Mary was a certain way, and Martha, I think, was the one who wanted to wash Jesus's feet. And the disciples said, "What are you doing, letting her wash her feet? You know, she shouldn't be doing that." That was her unique service behavior, and Jesus said, "Let's have it. Let's see it. Let her be creative in her own way." I think that was the story.
You know, we go into, when you go to all this motivation, you know, talks and things like that, they say, and in religions, in Bible, you know, they say, serve first, then it comes to you. And I think that that's also a motto at your school.
Yeah.
Service.
Yeah.
Scout, all of this is serve first.
That's right.
Yes.
I think they call it, sorry, I think they call it servant leadership. Servant leadership.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And Jesus led by that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
While in the book of, you know, currently in the book, I think the book of James, that is quite obvious that, you know, belief without action is vain. And action without belief is dangerous. So you need to have that. Your faith, you recognize the real faith, and is that correct by the fruit of it?
Yeah. Yeah. What were you going to say, Anne?
No, it's fantastic. I like it.
Oh, okay, good. Are we complete? Ready for the next sentence?
Sure.
Okay, you want to read?
Right. Secondly, the physical omni-success of all humanity is frustrated by the fact that scientific evolution, by which it could be accomplished, is almost entirely invisible, and its integrated significances are too difficult for total and effective comprehension by society.
Yeah. This is the reason why Carl Sagan was so cool, because he could talk about science in a way that people understood it. This is the reason why Neil deGrasse Tyson is so cool, and Something Green, and Mikhail Kaku. These guys can take science and talk about it in a way that creates an effective communication, and people understand it. We need more of those guys.
Steve, to add to that, because my two daughters are fans of Neil deGrasse Tyson, right?
Yeah.
And it pointed out to me that people used to ask him, why doesn't he write textbooks? Because the way he explains it is so much more fun, right? It's just he was explaining about bacteria, but he was talking about them going to a party, you know?
Yeah.
So then that there's the people who won't allow it would be the publishers and the universities, and
wow.
because yes, because the way he writes it is from the point of a story rather from facts.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah, so for that alone, they wouldn't allow it. So
Wow.
I so sad. Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, at one point at Columbia University in New York, the most successful I think it was scientist or economics of a place was a guy who refused the PhD. He just didn't want.
Yeah.
He had more publication than anybody else. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't find it necessary.
And the next paragraph really points something out along these lines to continue. Do you want to read that next paragraph, Anne?
Okay. One reason for the latter frustration is that the language of science has been up to now almost exclusively mathematical, that is non-conceptual.
And that's what we're talking about. That Neil deGrasse Tyson spoke in conceptual language. It wasn't mathematical. And so the textbook people didn't like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Einstein was all conceptual. And then he brought people around him who did the math. In fact, even Stephen Hawking conceived black holes, but needed Roger Penrose's math to prove it. And so Stephen Hawking says, I can use your math to prove there are black holes. And Roger Penrose said, well, I don't believe there are black holes. And Stephen Hawking said, I can use your math to prove it. And so they collaborated together and came up with the Big Bang theories.
Oh,
isn't that
but
interesting?
I think it's going further than that here, Steve.
Okay.
Is that it's talking to education. And that education has to be experienceable. Experience. I'm inventing the word. I don't know if it exists. Experiential education.
Yeah.
That's why it comes with things like the tetrahedron. That new geometry has to kind of, really define a new geometry that allows the understanding of complex phenomena in a way that is simple and can be fair.
And Bucky reaffirms that in the next paragraph. Almost does the same thing, Manu. Want to read that, Anne?
Sure. A second reason is that scientists altogether constitute less than 1% of the world population. Their thoughts are popularly unknown.
That's right. So you got all these scientists thinking all these thoughts. Nobody else is thinking those thoughts.
Love it.
Interesting. Any comments, Manu?
Well, I mean, it's all said.
Okay, good. Do you want to continue, Anne?
Sure. A third reason is that most scientists operate exclusively on a subjective basis as pure scientists. They also operate non-conceptually. Most of the objective technologists or applied scientists are specialists and are aware of the comprehensively integrated significance to society of the tasks they perform.
Yeah, now I think this goes back to the bees, because a third reason that most scientists operate exclusively on a subjective basis, in other words, they think their reality is the only reality because they're pure scientists. So they operate non-conceptually. They stay in their little math and they do these little things. Most of the objective technologies or applied science are specialists and are unaware of the comprehensively integrated significance to society of the tasks that they perform. So it takes
it's because they are not comprehensive.
Yeah.
In that gravity and radiation exist.
Yeah.
They coexist and they're always working.
It's like Elon Musk.
Yes, the specialist is radiative.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it is, or the other way. I don't know. And the science and the others, the pure scientist is, it feel like, is unique in understanding it in a way that of pure science. But you need to link the two to understand the significance of what you are doing. That's why I say specialists are unaware of the comprehensively integrated significance to society of the tasks they perform.
Mhm.
So what they are doing is not in a silo. It is for something comprehensively, but they are ignorant of it. If you are ignorant of something, you cannot target, you cannot focus.
Mhm.
I'm talking about targeting. When you finish your task of specialist, what do you do of it? Or do you do that? You didn't do it mindfully of all the interactions and all the influences on and over that exists, that what you're doing are actually kind of causing or being subject to.
You know what?
Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna have to science people through this. Because one of the things a couple of years ago I've been insisting that the teachers do is that whatever activities and coursework that we ask the kids to do, we must add a few more parameters there. They have to look at that topic or that aspect of science, but to get the students to look for the art in, let's say, light. If they're learning about UV light, or look for the art in it, or the entertainment side of it, or the sports side of it. And so that it makes sense to those who are not scientific, the not that 1%, right? So we started doing that, and we sending out to each other all the videos that we could find on kinetic art was one. And then we were looking at light shows, and even there is this beautiful performance, I think, from people who used to be with the Cirque du Soleil. And in Macau, they have this water performance. Beautiful. It's like people jumping off really, from the scaffolding and into the water. And the water can disappear into a platform. So you just imagine the computer, how accurate their the programming has to be, that the platform appears and disappears so that nobody dives down onto a solid platform instead of water, So we started getting our people to work on this with the students rather than to teach it as a pure science subject. Yeah. So I really but what we have discussed today I'm going to take my teachers through this, because the science people are the hardest to move, because of how in schools. I like this. Thank you.
Well, I'm still trying to get this back to the bees, and I think that if I uncomplicate Fuller's language here, specialists, in other words, people with a specific point of view, are unaware of the concept of the significance. They're unaware of the significance of their specialty when it's integrated into society. Right? That, okay, they can have a point of view, but if we're trying to integrate that into society, it means something. What does it mean? And I think the next two paragraphs kind of reveal something. The second paragraph will really reveal something. Let's continue to read if you're ready.
If I can just make a comment, what is the consequence of all bees dying?
Yep.
There's no honey.
Yeah.
And there's no flowers.
Yep.
That's true.
And there's no regeneration of species.
There's no food.
Exactly. So that's what Becky is talking about.
Yeah.
So if you are aware of that, then you will make sure that you open for that bee to go.
Right.
Yeah.
You won't let the bee fly to the glass to death. Right? So that is so awareness should impact our behavior. That's what we're talking about all here. So being educated in a way that has an impact that is significant on the way, on our function, individual function, the way we use the gifts that we've received.
Mhm.
That is our genetics and what we learn
Right.
in
Let's-
service.
In service. I love that. Let's continue reading, Anne.
A fourth reason is that world society is frustrated by the communication barriers between the many languages of mankind. I'll go on now.
We're kind of solving that problem today, aren't we? It seems like that English, with the internet, English is taking over
Yes.
to a great degree. But you know, most futuristic books talk about Korean, which is now becoming very popular, and different languages coming together. Like there's a bunch of French words in English and some German words. And I think there are some Japanese words, but America with their computer and with industry has been spreading out. So Anne, I'm so grateful, and Manu, I'm so grateful that you guys are speaking English. I feel like a dummy, but language is an issue.
But
so
you still speaking in the past.
Yeah.
It's not language like that. What is taken, the unified is now graphics.
Yeah. Symbols.
You see, my son is in graphics, you know,
Yeah.
it is, you know, in those hours, and the language is graphics, is the
Yeah.
metaverse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you heard about the metaverse
Yeah.
Yes.
with all the avatars, right? So you are creating a technology that allows communication in whatever language.
Yeah.
Because it's no more English. It could be Japanese, and there's instant translation.
Yeah.
You know, Siri and all the other guys are translating.
Yeah.
So we could be in a world that Steve, you have your avatar, Anne has her own avatar, and
Yeah.
I'm real. Say I'm
Mhm.
speaking English. And your
Yeah.
avatar is speaking Sequoia or whatever.
Yeah.
Anne was speaking Chinese,
Yeah.
but we will communicate
Yeah.
because there is a capability, our sensors, our computing capabilities. That's where Bucky always goes, man and the computer,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
With that gravity and the computer is that computational, that
Right.
radiative stuff.
And
And
that's-
those two brought together is a powerful tool for solving whatever that we need.
Yeah. That's why Star Trek has universal translators they carry on their chests, so that when the other guy speaks, the translator translates it for him right here. Google almost does that, right? You just speak
But they
it-
do. I mean, have you heard? I don't know if this is true or not. Somebody sent me a text. I mean, it looks like Google fired somebody
Yeah.
recently because he said that robots are sentient.
Oh, yeah.
And then there is this communication that, I mean, I don't know if that is true. Maybe
Yeah.
there's so much fake news
That's
circulating today, but it was interesting.
Yeah,
to
I
read
heard that a Google guy announced that their AI was sentient, and they
Yes.
and they didn't like that. They didn't want to scare people. Shall
So
we continue?
I don't know if you've seen the conversation there.
I haven't seen the exact conversation. I've seen the headline.
No, a friend from India sent me the conversation. I don't know. You're not on WhatsApp. But I will send it to Anne, or I'll look at the way to send it, to get the text of it,
Okay.
and then send it to you guys. It's very interesting.
Want to continue reading? Because we're getting some good stuff here. This next paragraph is good.
Okay. For the foregoing reasons, there are only a very few humans whose experience and operative faculties permit and inspire them to inform society regarding the significance of the evolutionary trending and of mankind's now potential physical and economic success.
Yeah, that's kind of your job. Bucky's talking about you. There are only very few humans whose experience and operative faculties permit you and inspire you to inform society regarding the significance of the evolutionary trending.
Yeah.
You know, you can't
There
be
is,
a bully. You know,
yeah,
it's time not to be a bully. It's time to
Yeah.
open up and allow this other person to have their space. And I don't like this woke conversation that's out there. I think, and remember, Canada was trying to make laws to require that certain pronouns be used. I'm against that. You know,
Mm.
I'm against having a law that says I have to say a certain thing a certain way. That's crazy. But I can certainly respect the other person. And if the other person wants to be called him or her or George or Annie or Manu, we call them we respect them, so we call them the way they prefer, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't make them conform. And you know,
Yeah.
the British were amazing because they would go into a foreign land and completely disregard anything that was local. I mean, to go into Beijing and call it Peking. I mean, those English guys must have been freaking deaf, right?
Mm.
It boggles my mind. And then they go to a beautiful African name for a lake, and they call it Lake Victoria. What's the African name for that lake?
I don't know. I don't know the name.
But it's a beautiful name. It's a
It's
beautiful.
on the Zambezi. It's on the Zambezi River.
That's right. And they
Yeah.
call it Lake
No,
Victoria.
no, no. Lake. No, you're talking about lake because there is Lake Victoria and there is Victoria Falls.
Yeah.
Two landmarks. The Lake Victoria is East Africa, at the border of Tanzania, Uganda. Yeah, Tanzania and Uganda.
I just heard a big thing on that.
And actually Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya. That's where it is. It's majestic. I don't know if you've ever seen that body of water. It's the second body of fresh water in the world. It is huge.
Yeah.
You don't see from coast to coast of Lake Victoria, but it's like that. And the Nile River, actual fact, comes into Lake Victoria and go out of Lake Victoria and come down at the Murchison Fall, another name, to get into Lake Albert, another European name, and turn up north into South Sudan. That is White Nile. And then it receives in Sudan the Blue Nile from Ethiopia.
I just found the original name for Lake Victoria. I'm going to shove it in the chat.
Yes.
And it's so cool. The lake is the source of the Nile River. This is where I heard it. I was hearing a podcast on discovering the source of the Nile, and there were all these British expeditions that went to do it. It was the second largest freshwater lake in the world after Lake Superior in North America. So we got that one, and then we got this lake. Among the various ethnic groups that live around the lake, it goes by indigenous names such as Nalubaile, maybe you can say them, and Nyanza and Ukirewe and Lolwe.
Nyanza, Ukerewe,
Aha.
Lolwe, yeah.
Isn't
Nalubale, Nyanza, Ukerewe, Lolwe.
Those
I don't
were
know what it means, but that's the way you pronounce it.
Yeah, and those were the indigenous names for what the British called Lake Victoria, and it's Lake Victoria, of course, you know.
Okay.
There was so much ego involved in naming that lake, and who discovered the lake. Oh my gosh, it was like a 15-year period with 3 or 4 expeditions and tons of jealousy and ego. It was just an amazing story. I think they're probably
the real source of a Nile is not that. The real source of a Nile is in the Rwenzori Mountains. You see, the Rwenzori is this in Central Africa, this big mountain, series, mountain chain. And then west of it, it flows toward the Congo River, becomes the Congo River, which is the second biggest river in the world, the second mightiest after the Amazon. And east of it is the Nile River, which is the longest river in the world.
Yeah.
The Nile survived the biggest desert in the world. Because the Sahara is bigger than the US and Canada put together. It is huge. But now, coming back to what we were saying, if you hear the language of, in the world of finance today, have you heard about a guy called Ray Dalio?
No.
You never heard about Ray Dalio? He's written this book. These two, I mean, this is a whole lot of books. You heard about, can you read this? The Big Debt Crisis.
I'll stop the sharing.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can stop it. There we go.
Yeah.
Put it up again, Manu.
You see the Big Debt Crisis?
Yeah, the big debt crisis.
Yes. It's several books. He studies history, you know, in the past at least 1,000, 2,000 years to look at cycle. And then there's this other one, these other two. One is called, the latest one is a Changing World Order. And then there is Principles itself. And this guy encouraged you. And then there is this one, which is illustrated, Principle for Success, Ray Dalio. Just Google Ray Dalio, Steve, and then you see what he's doing. What I'm trying to say is that he's about the only one now talking a very different language in the world of finance. And he's done it by studying history and seeing the cycles, how they repeat and what is happening and patterns. And he say he does it without emotion, mechanistically, right? Have you seen anything on it? Ray Dalio, Ray Dalio, D-A-L-I-O.
Okay, got it.
It is.
Is there something there to look at, Ann? Should I post that up here?
Well,
No, it's
it's
okay.
it's just the way. And you wanted to post something?
No. I'm just yep, found it. Yeah. Can look out for his stuff. Yeah.
He looks like the guy, one of the guys in oh my gosh, I can't remember, the TV show, and then a couple of comedians. He looks like one of the comedians. I'm not going to say.
No, this is here on this picture with this guy called what is his name again?
This is 50 Cent. 50 Cent.
He's a musician, yeah, businessman.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I thought it was 50 Cent.
Puffy.
Yeah, Puff Daddy. Puff
Daddy, yes.
Yeah. Very reasonable.
But he's actually very smart guy. That Puff Daddy.
Yeah. Very cool.
But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that he studies, you know, he studies cycles, and he bring about how evolution plays into shaping the economic cycles.
Yeah.
There are long cycles, there are shorter ones. There's what you call the long cycle of debt. Then there is the economic cycle. Then there is war. Then there's a lot of other things. Quite profound and different. And he's really sticking his head and really publishing these things to educate people about what is going on, because what is going on is very scary in the world today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings us pretty much to our close today. So, Anne, how are you feeling and what's your takeaway today?
Okay, actually, we've had a really wonderful discussion today. And there are quite a few things that both of you have pointed out that I'm going to take away with me for sure to use as well. One is that wonderful reminder, Manu, that the destructive capacity is easy and to be constructive is difficult. Yeah, people forget that very often. And then Steve, in particular, I like the one on the story about the three sisters the crops. Yeah. This is something that we should be thinking that way. Yeah. Not just about planting, but in general, how we deal with things. So those are my two takeaways, big ones outside of all the other things that we've discussed. So thank you very, very much. Yeah. So Manu, how do you feel and what is your takeaway?
I feel grateful and feel happy. You know, we really had a good exchange. I like this exposure that, you know, whatever comes to you, let it be known. And that it might not be correct, it might not be anything, but, you know, at least it is something that you let out and that you are ready to exchange for. What I take away is many things, but there are words that are like, we have unique capabilities. And we learn, we have the ability to learn and progress, but in service. In other words, is to give before you receive. And that to me is quite powerful. Give, exchange, expose. Let other people know. Take some risk. Right? Be patient. Do service. And it will come back to you. You have used your specific gift in the service of the evolution that is upon us, whether we want it or not. So that's what I take away. Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Well, I feel really marvelous that we have such beautiful brains and hearts on this meeting today. That we can take the words of Bucky, who generally was concerned for human beings and for the integrity and making a world where everybody counted. And that's the problem today. That's the problem we have, is making a world where everybody counted. And the pendulum is swinging wide both ways. There's some people on this woke thing that are way too pushy. And then people respond, and there are these conservative people who say, this is the way we want it. Let's make America great again. You know, so I'm grateful that we can come to this call and just get a free flow of ideas and sharing. And then we can take these things and apply them in our lives. So that's really wonderful to me. I'm complete. Everybody good?
Yes, all good. Thank you so much.
See you all next.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, yeah.